We're back with a feature Friday. It feels like we haven't had one of these in a long time, but today we sit down with Coach Brandon Blackman, the defensive coordinator for Delaware State, to break down his coaching experience, the coaches he's been around, and the coach that he's with right now, Desean Jackson. Oh yeah, it's locked on HBCU. Play my music.
You are Locked On HBCU, your daily podcast covering HBCU sports. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, family? Welcome back to another episode of the Locked On HBCU podcast, your number one daily one-stop shop for everything HBCU athletics, Monday through Friday, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And now, of course, Sam Darian Gray, a.k.a. the Mouth of the South, Texas Southern alum and former TSU Herald Sports editor and current contributing writer at USA Today's Saints Wire. Thank you for going on this journey with me, making Locked On HBCU your first listen of the day every day. And remember, just because the mic cuts off, it doesn't mean the journey is over. Just means it's time to follow me on Twitter at South Exclusives. Starts with an S and ends with an S. Today's episode is brought to you by 5 Hour Energy. Head to 5hourenergy.com to find over 15 flavors to choose from. Need one now? Grab 5 Hour Energy at your local grocery or convenience store. Stock up today and stay energized. So we're all about Brandon Blackman, the defensive coordinator at Delaware State today. As you can see on the right side, if you're on YouTube, we're going to look at his coaching experience, his time with Coach Jackson, and then also how he's viewing the Delaware State spring practice session. The word of the month is value. So we'll look at all of that. But without further ado, let's talk to Blackman himself. And I have here with me new Delaware State defensive coordinator, Brandon Blackman. You're very experienced. You've been around. You've been a bunch of different places. In the latest spot that you come from, Tennessee Tech, you guys had a really good defense over the last two seasons. In 2023, you were number one in total defense as far as yardage goes. In 2024, you were number one in total defense and scoring defense. So having that success that you come from, what principles from last year and the year before defense do you plan on bringing to Delaware State?
Well, the first thing is culture. On this defense, you have to be willing to establish a set of rules, a set of behaviors that have to get done with these players so that we know how to act regardless of the situation. And so for us, one of the first things is just being organized. That's a huge thing, just being organized, whether it's how we take the field, how we look back at the coaches from the field, how we set the front as backers, just getting aligned and sound within our scheme is a big deal because at the end of the day, defensively, one of the number one things that you hate after every game, whether you're watching your favorite team on TV or whatever, is you hate when you watch your team when they're beating themselves. Mm-hmm. And so for us, we have to be efficient, we have to be organized, and we have to be disciplined with how we do things. And the reason why we were the past few years when I was at Tennessee Tech a really good defense was one, I'm always say players. You got to have good players to be a good defense. But at the end of the day, man, defense is about mentality. It's about mentality, and you got to be willing to find the guys that have the mentality, that so-called dog mentality, that they don't care what the situation is. They kind of got that backyard boogie mentality where, man, I don't care where you spot the ball, any place, anytime, anywhere, I'm ready to go. And so for me, this staff, it's about giving those young men right now that kind of mentality. And for them, it's trying to get these guys to understand, hey, whatever happened, it's in the past. That's over with. Now, as we start, we take the field, we're going to be organized, we're going to be sound, and we're going to be disciplined. When you can do that for 4 quarters, man, good things can happen. And so that's what we're trying to establish with these kids right now, just trying to break some bad habits, trying to get these guys to work together because as a good defense, one of the hardest things about football is you're trying to get 11 guys to do their job at the same time.
Yeah.
And so for us to be a good, sound defense, we're trying to make sure that all 11 guys can communicate, execute their assignment, and do it together at the same time. And when you get that, man, you got a lot of Hornets running around the field. And that's why we call ourselves the Swarm Squad. So that's basically what we're trying to establish. That's what I'm trying to bring with me from our last schools. Just a group of guys that are fired up for football and that are going to execute and do their assignments, and most importantly, work together. And so when you do that, you get some good results.
Yeah, and Tennessee Tech is not the only place you've been. Like I mentioned, you've been on the P4 level, been on the G5 level, been arena, been Big South, you've been high school, you've been all around.
Yeah.
And you're talking about this culture, right? How much do you take from every spot that you get to now that you're here as a defensive coordinator and you're leading the ship for yourself?
I'm very privileged and I'm very blessed. I've worked for a lot of great coaches, head coaches in specific. I've been fortunate from the high school level, the junior college level, the division, FCS, Group of Five, all these different levels. I've been very fortunate to work for a lot of good people, to where there were things that I could learn from these guys. Some things you like, some things you don't like. And, it's like just kind of working backwards in my career. So I just got done working for Bobby Wilder. Well, what are the advantages for working for a head coach like Bobby Wilder? Well, this guy was at the University of Maine. He was at Old Dominion. That guy, everywhere he's gone, he's flipped programs. So you get to learn from a guy on how to win, how to get a program aligned, how to do things the right way, how to not cut corners, how to be transparent with your players, and then as you keep going back, man, I worked for Billy Napier, who's now the head coach at Florida. Yeah. I mean, how that guy shows up for work, it's impressive, man. I mean, just his attention to detail, how organized he is. He doesn't miss anything. And so, yes, he comes from working with Nick Saban, that Alabama system. But, man, that guy was sharp, man. It wasn't something in recruiting, whether it was a kids camp, nothing got past that guy. Then one of my favorite times, working under Herm Edwards, Antonio Pierce, who I've known for a long time, being around Marvin Lewis, just learning the NFL way, learning to be a professional, kind of picking Herm Edwards' mind every morning. Herm likes to get up early in the morning. He's on the treadmill, 4:30 on the dot in the morning, and for me being a young coach, it's, just getting next to him on the treadmill and picking his brain. What was it like with the Kansas City Chiefs? What was it like being the head coach of the New York Jets?
Right.
And for me, it was a blessing because I got to pick his brain and see, all right, what did you like? What did you not like as a head coach? Watching him kind of work with those young men on how to be professionals, teaching them the right habits. Antonio Pierce, I love it, man. Antonio Pierce is Antonio Pierce.
Yeah, he is.
And he doesn't change his personality. He's not going to change it for you. He's not going to change it for anybody else. And that's why I thought the Raiders were it was just perfect for him. And I know it didn't work out. But at the end of the day, man, Antonio Pierce, he's a California guy just like me. We played at the same junior college, years apart though. But just watching how he did it, man, Antonio Pierce is a sharp guy. A really sharp guy. So I got to learn from Antonio Pierce, man, in recruiting, just how detailed he was, how much film that guy watched, man. A lot of times Antonio Pierce would be the last one out the office, and so it's amazing. Like, here's a pro guy, a guy that's been there. He's got Super Bowl ring, he's done it all. And this guy's working his butt off, man, and so I got to learn a strong work ethic from him. Marvin Lewis, when I get to go up there around the Bengals, kind of help out, watch out how they do things, man. Watching how Marvin Lewis can connect with guys, how he can get guys to run through a wall for him. Those were things that I learned, when I was at New Mexico. Danny Gonzalez, Rocky Long, man, when those guys were at San Diego State, that was one of the winningest programs, the most winningest programs in the nation. And so, again, I got to learn a different way on how to win. Danny Gonzalez was really good with connecting with players, doing things a different way. Man, that defense, that defense was special, And then you think of guys like Tony White. I was with him at Arizona State. Now he's the defensive coordinator at Florida State. So I'm learning a different scheme, but watching how he connects with guys, learning how sharp he is, and it just keeps going back. It's so many great coaches that I could thank for just molding me and building me into the coach that I am now. And so, when I kind of compare all these guys, the number one thing that I've learned from all the most successful coaches I've been around is, one, how sharp they are, how organized they are, how disciplined those guys are, man. I mean, from Antonio Pierce to Bobby Wilder, man, Herm Edwards, Marvin, those guys do not cut corners. Herm says it all the time. You cannot cheat this game. You cannot cheat this game. And so for me, I was blessed. I know everybody has different paths that they go, but I was fortunate to where I could be around those guys and I could learn, because sometimes you could miss your blessing. You could be around a guy like that and you don't take notes. You don't see how they move. You don't bug them and ask questions. I mean, when an AP was with the Raiders, I'm blowing his phone up. I want to know, like, hey, I saw you guys doing cover 3. I want to know, like, hey, what are you guys doing? Hey, you guys just beat the Kansas City Chiefs. What'd you do to confuse Patrick Mahomes? Or I just want to know, And so Billy Napier, man, I want to bug these guys. I know they're probably sick of me too. I'll be blowing their phone up. But again, I've been blessed and fortunate to work for so many great people that I've learned how to do things the right way. And it's been a blessing because, in football, everybody expects things to happen right now. But the number one thing that happens is there's a process. It takes time. You got to change the culture, the behavior. And so that's probably my favorite thing, even being a defensive coordinator here, this team, I get it. They've struggled in the past. So bam, I come out first practice. I want us to look like the top team out there right now.
Of course, as you should.
Again, and I have high expectations. I mean, you want to have high expectations, but there is a process. We are changing the culture. And I know we'll talk about Coach Jack, but, he does a great job. I've already just being around him, man, he's just so sharp. He reminds me of all those guys that I've worked for. He's honest. He tells the truth to the players. He doesn't cut corners. He does it the right way. And then on top of that, he was a professional that has done it at the highest level. But he doesn't brag about how many deep balls he's caught in the NFL. He talks about the process in which he did it the right way. And so that's where I've been blessed and fortunate in my career to have learned from all these coaches. And I'm lucky, man. I've coached on both sides of the ball. And I've done it at all levels to where I've coached tight ends at the Power 5 level. I've coached wide receivers. Here I am coaching linebackers. I've coached DBs. And so I've had experience on both sides of the ball where there's a lot of people, they coach one position their whole career. And so I've been able to see both sides of it. And so that's been an advantage and a blessing in my career to where I could see the whole picture. And so at the end of it, though, I'm fortunate. I've learned a lot from a lot of those guys, and it's made me who I am. But at the end of the day, like Herm has always said, don't go out there trying to be Nick Saban on day one, man. Be you.
Yeah. I love that. I love that. And you mentioned day one because that's a big part of what I want to get to. You have a lot of coaches who you've been a part of their program and they've done things a certain way. Now you have somebody who's stepping in year one and Coach Jackson. I want to take a look at the difference with the guy who's just starting as we continue with Locked On HBCU.
Yeah.
Today's episode is brought to you by Nissan, and we're all about the stats because numbers don't lie. Numbers do not lie. And when it comes to the all-new Nissan Armada Pro 4X, the numbers are on an MVP level. With the ability to tow up to 8,500 pounds, it can quite literally carry the whole team. Plus the gear. Whatever you need to go, I promise the Armada can do it. It's powered by a twin-turbo V6 engine, delivering the strength and performance to handle highways, back roads, and everything in between. Say you have a large party of people you're trying to bring with you. It's room for up to 8 people. The Armada Pro 4X is built for big crews, big adventures, and even bigger memories. Whether you're exploring off-road trails or rolling up to the arena, the Armada Pro 4X brings power, versatility, and style wherever you go. Take your adventures to new heights in the all-new Nissan Armada Pro 4X. Learn more at nissanusa.com. Today's episode is also brought to you by 5 Hour Energy. Listen, sometimes we just have those days. Sometimes we just have those moments in which I can't get up, or I've gotten up and I just can't move. I'm lethargic today. I had a rough last night. I've been there. You've been there. We've all been there. But if we had 5 Hour Energy, we knew how we got out of those situations. 5 Hour Energy gives you that spark that you need. It doesn't matter if you've been up late watching tournament sessions, watching tournament action, because we know it's that time of the year, or if maybe you're just still trying to catch up with that lost hour of sleep that's been evading you. 5 Hour Energy is the way to go. Head to 5hourenergy.com to find over 15 flavors to choose from, including watermelon, blueberry, and peach mango. You can even build your own 12-pack or 24-pack if you want to have a variety, and it can be delivered right to your door. Need one now? Grab a 5 Hour Energy shot at your local grocery or convenience store. They're everywhere. Stock up today and stay energized. As we continue rolling on today's episode of Locked On HBCU, I appreciate you for making this your first listen of the day every day. For your second listen, make sure you're checking out Locked On College Basketball. It is March Madness, so you're going to want to make sure that you are checking out our premier college basketball show wherever you listen or watch your podcast. Right now, I have with us Brandon Blackman, defensive coordinator of Delaware State. And we just talked about all of these coaches that you are able to learn something from. You're able to watch their experience. But the thing that's different now is you are watching a coach who is stepping into a role that he is entirely unfamiliar with. How have you seen in just a few months of being on a staff and spring practice? It's a short amount of time, but what have you seen in the growth of Desean Jackson as a head coach in that time frame?
Yeah, well, to me, it's pretty easy. I can tell why Coach Jack has had a lot of success as a player. As a player, he took no shortcuts. And for him, I get it, man. He's had a successful career, but let's get it right. He earned that career. He earned it. All the success that man had on the field, he earned it. And as a coach, there's no difference with his work ethic, the way this man watches film. I mean, even with my defense, he'll ask me a question. He does not miss anything. He's very detailed. He's very organized, and he's very, very sharp, very sharp. And so the thing that I like about him, it's kind of awesome just watching him. For a guy that's taken over a program with not a lot of coaching experience for his very first time, he's a very sharp man, very sharp. He doesn't miss a lot of things. And so I love it too, because he's just being himself. He's just being himself. He's not coming in trying to be this person or that person. He's just doing it himself. And I love it too, because, man, he cares. He cares for these players. He cares for our staff. He cares for this university. And so when I watch him, man, it's kind of funny, because I've been around a lot of great coaches. A lot of great coaches, they see the flow of practice. They see how guys are running from drill to drill. They're watching not as much as the scheme, but they're watching the culture. They're watching if their message is being carried on from the staff meetings, the team meetings, to the field. For example, if Coach Jack says, He wants our offense to have urgency. He wants those guys to fly around. He's out there. He's watching that. Whereas a coach, Coach Nemo or me, we're so caught up in the scheme. This guy's watching the flow of the practice. And, man, I'm telling you, if one of my players gets caught walking or not running to the ball, oh, he does not miss it. If he tells players to run in a certain direction and they cut a corner or they're not doing it to the max of their potential, oh, man. I mean, he's all over it. But he's really good. My favorite part about him is he makes sure with these players, he defines the why. Why is it important to do the right things? Why is it important that when you get mad on the field to not just go out there fighting against the next guy? Because we're going to get penalized. Why is it important as a ball carrier is running upfield for everybody to chase the ball carrier? Because if the guy fumbles the ball, somebody needs to be there to pick it up. Why is it important for the defense to run to the ball? Because if there is a fumble defensively, we need to be there to pick it up. Why is it important that when we run gassers, everybody starts behind the line? Because those little small details, they all catch up to you later in the season. And so for him, man, you could tell, man, he's locked in, man, because I could tell he's pretty strict too. Like I can tell he's got like a strict little diet, and he's in great shape, man. It's amazing, man. I'm 39, he's 38, and I am not in the same shape as him. I'm gonna tell you that right now. It's amazing. Sometimes me and the coaches be standing there. He'll show the guys like just how to run a route, or he'll show guys how to explode out of your stance. And it's like he's showing you, but there's kind of like that minute where you're looking like, okay, first off, that was pretty impressive. You just got off the line of scrimmage, So, this guy, man, he's doing it the right way. He's very detailed. I applaud him. As a head coach, you got to go from meeting after meeting to interview after interview, and man, I drink a lot of coffee. I don't know what this guy does for energy, but man, he's sharp from the morning all the way to evening. I mean, he's just on it one by one. Yeah. And so he's doing a good job at just pulling this team together, letting them know how much he cares for them. And I mean, like it's little stuff. Like last night, we had Inky Johnson talk to the team, and it's one thing to say you want to create brotherhood. It's one thing you want to create this message to the players about doing things the right way. But he's got motivational speakers coming in, and it's just little stuff like that. And I get it. Not every program can do that, but he goes the extra mile to do things to get these kids to want to run through the wall, and even as a staff, man, he's showing the staff, videos of Kobe Bryant, Nipsey Hussle, who we knew, some other people, Dan Campbell, who I love, man. He shows videos of Dan Campbell. Yeah. I mean, you watch Dan Campbell, you want to run through a wall for that guy. But he does a good job from scheme to motivation to culture. He puts it all together. And so, again, man, I think he's doing a really good job because the very first thing that he did was when he stood before the whole team, he stood before all of us as coaches, was he didn't come in as, hey, I'm Coach Desean Jackson, man. I played for the Eagles. I did this. I did that. To be honest, most of the time, you wouldn't even know that he played for the Eagles. And I say that respectfully he's coming in every day as the head football coach of Delaware State University. This is our goal. This is our mission. And he makes sure that everybody has their eyes focused on the same goal. And so I love it. That's what he does, man. And I mean, every now and then too, I'm not going to lie. You got guys like him, Coach Chung, you got Clinton Portis. Sometimes you do got to use that to your advantage. But at the end of the day, when he's walking around these hallways, he's not walking around as Desean Jackson, NFL player. He's walking around as the head coach, and he handles himself the correct way. And, I don't know who his mentors are. Obviously, I know he's got, Coach Clark, Coach Clark, man, is a firecracker. That guy is a bulldog, man. He doesn't miss anything. I know that was a mentor for him. You know, he's got Andy Reid, you know, Sean McVay, you know, all those guys. But, man, he's doing it the right way, and he reminds me so much of all those other coaches I worked around. And the best part about it, he's being himself.
Yeah.
He's
You know
being
what?
himself.
You mentioned some of the other guys that, you know, like, man, sometimes you get caught up in that moment. I want to ask about the transfer portal and how they relate to those guys as we talk about the Delaware State spring session and building up that roster to wrap up today's episode of Locked On HBCU.
The NCAA tournament is here, and so is the Bracket Breakdown. Locked On Podcast Network and Amazon Fire TV channels are teaming up to deliver NCAA tournament coverage like never before. Watch studio shows featuring former players and Locked On's local experts as they guide you through every upset, buzzer beater, and bracket matchup. Stream it all for free on Amazon Fire TV channel. Search Bracket Breakdown to see it all for free. It's your team every day.
As we're wrapping up today's episode of Locked On HBCU, I appreciate you for making this your first listen of the day every day, making it all the way to segment 3, and I thank you 2 times for that. Thank you. Thank you. I have Delaware State defensive coordinator Brandon Blackman here, and we were just talking about some of those coaches that you had experience with and how Desean Jackson compared to those, and you talked about the other coaches who are around. I didn't know that coaching was going to be the driving thread. I know that sounds crazy. I'm talking to a coach, but I didn't know that the past experience with certain coaches was going to be the driving thread of this interview, but it's leading something and leading somewhere nice. We're talking about guys like Clinton Portis, guys like Desean Jackson, who have a big name nationally before they become coaches. I wanted to ask about the transfer portal. As you're sitting here in spring practice, are you expecting to hit the portal again strong in that spring session of the portal window?
Well, the first thing is, you know, obviously the transfer portal has taken over college football. Yeah. I mean, it is just absolutely taken college football over. With us being a new staff, and again, this goes back to what I was saying with Coach Jack, just, man, he understands people. He wants to give people a fair chance. Right now on our roster, we have evaluated and watched every game from last season. So we have a little bit of an idea of who on this team can do what they're good at, what their strengths are, what their weaknesses are. But to be fair, what we're doing this spring practice or this spring ball is right now is an audition for the whole entire team. Mm-hmm. Everybody has a fair chance right now to go out, regardless of who you were last year, no matter how much success you had, no matter how much success you didn't have. He's giving everybody on this team a fair, equal opportunity to prove themselves. And that number one word right now is value. What kind of value are you bringing to the team? And so when you talk about the transfer portal, the only way you can get into that is to ask the questions, okay, we just finished spring practice. Okay, who on the D-line? Did we have enough guys that showed up? If not, then we got to make some room for some new guys. On the linebacker unit, did we have enough linebackers to make plays?
Right.
If not, we got to go to the transfer.
Yeah,
portal.
you can't know that right now.
Exactly.
This is something you need to wait until you get the spring season. And you know what? I'm guilty of this, right? One thing I'm guilty of is focusing on, especially in y'all's situation where it's a new staff and everything, but focusing on who's coming in. But what about who's there? What about the guys who are already present that are catching your eye early? Is there anybody who's jumping out to you quickly?
Yeah. There actually is. Just for opponent purposes, I don't want to give exact names. But I will tell you this. There has been a few players that, you know, as every coach on this staff, our number one job is to not, Mike Tomlin said this quote, and I love it. Don't run away from coaching. Don't run away from it.
He said that on the pivot, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes,
and so we're here to train and develop these young men. And so right now, we're trying to develop these guys to do certain things and to do it the way you're asking them. And once you define it, if you watch those guys and they start doing it, sometimes, regardless of what happened last year, you kind of flip on the film and you're like, I could work with this guy.
Right.
And there's been a couple guys already on this team where you're like, you know what? I could work with this kid. He's coachable. He listens. He busts his butt. And most importantly, he's pretty athletic. We just got to put him in position to make plays and play once, to his strength. And so there's been some players that have sparked out that we like. But I'll also be honest with you, too. There have also been some players that, we kind of already know right now, before we even finish practice, that it might not be a good outlook for this guy. But again, we're not going to run away from coaching. We're going to try to develop him, but he's got only a few more practices to prove himself. And if he can't do it, we might have to go in a different direction. And so that's when you ask the transfer portal right now. We're trying to go through this process. We're trying to lift every rock. We want to make sure we tapped out this team before we finally say, okay, we're bringing in this many guys at each position. Because you got to remember now, you can only bring in so many players.
It's a cap
and
on it.
So you gotta know, okay, what is your scheme? What is the scheme that you're trying to run? Who are the most important players, to help enhance that scheme? Obviously now I'm going to say a traditional, answer, but defensively, the defensive line, you just watched the Super Bowl, the defensive line, I need guys that can get off the ball and put pressure on the quarterback. And so who are those guys? And that's, a big question that we're asking in spring. Who in the D-line can do that? Corners, who can cover? Who's the guy that I can leave on an island out there by himself and he's not rattled by anything and he can go out there mano-a-mano and win his matchup? And so to answer your question, that's how we're kind of going about it. We're just trying to make sure, man, we look at every little ounce of this team before we say, okay, we're going to blow it up and start going in a different direction.
Coach, I appreciate you. I appreciate looking at the different coaches that have provided insight that has shaped the culture that you are now leading on that Hornet defense. I appreciate the insight of the very short amount of time, but very impactful time that you've had with Desean Jackson, as well as how you guys are taking an evaluation outlook and outset going into spring practice. This was phenomenal. I hope to do this again sometime, probably before the season or after, whatever. But yep. I appreciate you coming on here, giving an insight on Monday, guys. It's a little early, right? We're recording this on Thursday afternoon, but I think that Monday we'll probably do some sort of recap of the March Madness teams because everybody made it to the round of 64 or the bracket of 64, however you want to phrase it. So be on the outlook for that on Monday. In the meantime, in between time, if you want to follow Coach Blackman, you can find him on Twitter at Coach B Blackman is right there underneath for all of my video watchers. But in the meantime, in between time, until the next time that we hear to the family, take care, stay blessed. Peace.